Astro Bot was one of my most anticipated games this year. I did have a strong feeling it would be a solid title, considering how good Astro's Playroom was. Still, the game managed to surprise me. Here's my better late than never review of the game. I'm like the tortoise of video game reviews. Platformers typically have super simple premises. This game is no different. Astro Bot is casually chilling with his 300 homies, couldn't have sounded any whiter, dear lord, in his ship, when suddenly this giant green booger named Nebulax destroys his ship, steals all the vital ship components, and separates Astro from all of his friends, before he crash lands onto a desert planet. From there, Astro must explore 6 distinct galaxies in order to find all of his friends and ship parts so he can rebuild his ship. Why did Nebulax do this, you might be wondering. Simply put, he's an asshole. Luckily, the story doesn't really matter in platformers. It's the gameplay we actually care about. So, how is it? Really, really good. Movement is incredibly slick, and the controls are very responsive. This is a necessity, as those two things can make or break a platformer, especially during its most challenging segments, something this game certainly has. Apparently, these games are aimed towards children, yet include deceptively difficult platforming challenges that say, "Ho-ho, guess again, bitch!" What makes Astro Bot stand out from other PS5 titles is it takes full advantage of the PS5 controller, an otherwise severely underutilized piece of tech. Including DLC, there are 80 different stages, taking place across a total of 8 different galaxies. Level design is more linear, not quite as linear as the traditional Crash Bandicoot games, but not as open as Spyro either. While I prefer open world platformers, I certainly don't mind the way levels are structured in this game either, as all the stages are well-designed, beautiful landscapes with their own distinct themes and power-ups. What makes levels so fun is how you traverse through them by using the power-ups you obtain. There are over a dozen in the game, counting character transformations, and I will get more into those in a wee little bit, so don't worry your pants off. These power-ups are used thoroughly throughout the level in super fun ways. For example, punching, pulling, lifting heavy objects, or swinging across gaps with the frog gloves. Or transforming into a sponge where you can absorb water. This turns you into a frickin' kaiju that demolishes everything in your path, put out fires, or fill up watering holes. The icing on the cake is you can really feel the weight behind these power-ups whenever you use their abilities. And it's all thanks to what I said earlier about the game taking full advantage of the PS5 controller, namely the adaptive triggers. Other awesome uses of the controller include the way the game uses vibration mode. If you have vibration mode on, Astro steps can be felt in the form of tiny vibrations. Depending on what kind of surface Astro is treading across, the feeling of Astro steps will change. For example, if he's walking across sand, the controller will make you feel like you're actually walking on sand. Yet another way that they managed to use the controller in a super interesting way is by blowing into the controller's hole, which will get things like wind propellers to move. My only complaint about the blowing mechanic is there were times when I did it and heard the controller produce an audible moan in response. All these features make you feel more immersed within the game's world than any other PlayStation title I've ever played, and I'm not exaggerating. The cool thing about the power-ups is they're not a one-and-done deal. You will use them many times over throughout other levels. Most of the regular levels, you won't have too much trouble with dying. Whenever you do die, checkpoints throughout standard levels are plentiful, meaning you won't have to retrace your steps too far. There is one special stage in every world that is unlocked after you defeat the boss. In these stages, you basically become a PlayStation icon character and gain their abilities. These particular transformations are some of the most fun ones you can use, as the stage is perfectly tailored around their abilities. You can unlock secret stages, and by extension a secret galaxy, by uncovering galaxy portals in many different levels. These stages aren't really any more difficult than standard stages, at least not to me, but they are still just as fun and are a nice way of rewarding the player for their curiosity. The optional challenge levels, as their name implies, are where the real difficulty lies. These bonus stages will test your platforming capabilities, as you will most definitely die quite a few times. Like, I remember this one challenge where I died probably at least 24 times, maybe? It's nothing compared to Crash Bandicoot, of course, but still. Especially that level, what is it called? Stormy Ascent in the first Crash game. Fuck off. It is brutal. It's absolutely brutal. Fortunately, because the game controls like a dream, whenever you do die, it will most definitely be less about the game having shit controls, and more about you sucking ass and needing to get gooder. The higher difficulty for optional levels is, of course, typical for platformers. New challenge stages and bots for you to collect had been added in free updates since the game's launch in the form of speed trials. This is how you should release DLC for games. Entirely free. A lot of video game developers and publishers can learn something from Team Asobi. Then there's the hub world called the Crash Site, for obvious reasons. It starts off by being a desolate place that expands and quickly becomes lively with the more of Astro's friends you find, basically transforming it into an oasis and, by extension, another level with its own bots to rescue. The only gripe I have about the levels is that the last world is rushed, as it's basically one giant on-the-rails space shooter, unlike the previous worlds that have a bunch of different separate levels. In spite of this, I still thought the final space battle was pretty epic. It made for a very cool spectacle that ended the game on a satisfying note. The main collectibles in the game, of course, are the bots. There's over 300 of them. God damn! Much like with any other platformer, if you collect enough of the main collectible, you end up unlocking new levels, including an additional challenge level which unlocks after you obtain all 300 bots found in the base game. This challenge in particular is supposed to be the hardest level in the entire game. I mean, I haven't gotten to it yet, but I'm very close to getting to it. I like to take my time with games. That's why the reviews come slow, and that's why I haven't 100%ed it. You know, shut up. When it comes to finding the bots throughout the levels, many of them can be very well hidden. A large portion of the bots you rescue pay homage to so many iconic PlayStation franchises, including severely underrated ones like The Legend of Dragoon and Days Gone. The only PlayStation characters who weren't put in the game are ones from the Final Fantasy franchise. Unfortunately, this is because Team Asobi could not get approval from Square Enix to use Final Fantasy characters in their game. Fuck you, Square. I mean, I get they have the right to say no, but it's like, I wish they didn't. The second collectible you'll find are coins for buying accessories like a new paint job for your paddle ship, game controller ship that's a controller, fucking ship troller. You can also buy a bunch of different costumes with these gold coins, and accessories for the bots you'll end up rescuing at the gotcha machine. Coins can also unlock these metal peckers at the beginning of every level, after you complete it, of course, who help you uncover any secrets you missed because you're too much of an idiot to find them yourself. The final collectible are puzzle pieces. You collect enough of these, and you unlock new buildings within the hub world, which you can then enter. Overall, the game has a shitload of different collectibles that will keep you busy for a long while. As someone who grew up with platformers, another thing I've noticed about most of them is they don't typically have a large variety of different enemies you can contend with. Astro Bot breaks that mold by including over 70 different enemy types. I mean, sure, there's a couple reskins thrown in here and there. Thankfully, most of them are not reskins. Fighting them is not difficult, but I like the fact that each one requires a different strategy to beat. And this does include Smitty small bosses who can be found throughout many of Astro Bot's levels. In my experience, bosses in platformers tend to be a hit or miss. Boss fights in Astro Bot, on the other hand, while not super challenging, are surprisingly great, as they always involve duking it out with these Titanic-sized robotic monsters in fairly intense multi-phase battles. Every single boss has a healthy amount of different attacks at their disposal, and one of the game's many power-ups is cleverly implemented throughout the fight itself. My only complaint about the bosses is they end too soon, and I'll rely on the classic summoning minions trope.
Minus 10 points for Gryffindor!
When it comes to the graphics and additional details, I just want to say, first off, every single stage within Astro Bot is bursting with color and personality, as are the characters residing within them. The best way I can describe how the visuals look is they are very Pixar-esque. I'm talking about before Disney became a soulless, black-hearted, uninspired corporate entity. Astro Bot might be the best looking game I have ever played. You may not think it by the footage, but when you play this game in person on a 4K TV, let me tell ya, buddy, fucking drop-dead gorgeous game, eh? On to the details. Astro Bot himself, aside from making a few cutesy noises, doesn't utter a word. Yet, that doesn't stop him from being one of the most expressive characters you'll ever lay your eyes on. Astro has so many unique idle animations that give him such an interesting, lively personality. And he's not the only one. All the robots you end up rescuing have their own unique idle animations and reactions whenever you decide to needlessly assault them for your own sick, twisted amusement. Many of them will even react to other bots you have saved in one way or the other. So much attention to detail in this game, it's crazy. The final point I'll be going over is the music. It's very cheerful sounding, energetic, and quite nostalgic for elders like me, as it harks back to platformers made for the original PlayStation, like Spyro the Dragon. While other soundtracks sound like they were ripped straight out of Toy Story and just placed into Astro Bot. Then, the music becomes unbelievably groovy. Some soundtracks are remixes of already existing IPs. When I say remixes, I don't mean the shitty kind you hear on the radio with that one super simplistic beat. It's impossible to stay depressed once you hear even one of this game's soundtracks. It reminds me of Stellar Blade in the sense where I can't recall there being a single track that sucked. My tiny gripe about the soundtrack is sometimes the same track is reused for multiple stages. Save for that, the music is stellar. Interstellar. In my opinion, Astro Bot isn't just only one of the best platformers of all time, but one of the best games ever created. It feels like a PlayStation 1 platformer with modern touch-ups, a splash of Super Mario Sunshine and Galaxy. These are the kind of games that Sony should make more of. One that has innovation ingrained into its gameplay, just good old platforming fun. It really touched me, and not in the inappropriate way either. Easy 9.5 out of 10. Look at that fucking face. Look at it!
So cute! Oh my god, he's so cute! I just want to hold him and squeeze him and be his bestest friend in the whole wide world!